Damian Okafor sat on the balcony of his luxurious mansion, sipping an expensive glass of wine. His life was everything people dreamed of: fast cars, private jets, and a business empire worth billions. But despite having everything, he felt empty. Love had always been a transaction in his world. Women threw themselves at him, but deep down, he knew they didn't love him. They loved his money. He had been heartbroken too many times, and now he was tired. One evening, while driving through the streets of Lagos, he saw a group of beggars sitting under a bridge. They were laughing and sharing a small meal, despite their struggles. Their happiness touched something deep in his heart. For the first time, Damian saw life from a different perspective. A crazy idea formed in his mind. What if I became one of them? What if I left my wealth behind and lived as a poor man? Maybe then I'll find someone who truly loves me. His best friend and personal assistant, Tunde, thought he had lost his mind when he shared his plan. "Boss, you're worth billions. You can't just disappear and start living like a beggar," Tunde protested. But Damian was determined. He would change his name, dress in rags, and disappear from his billionaire life. He would walk the streets of Lagos as a poor man in search of real love. Early one morning, Damian left behind his luxury suits, watches, and expensive lifestyle. Dressed in torn clothes with dirt smudged on his face, he walked into the streets of Lagos as an ordinary beggar. People who once bowed before him in respect now ignored him completely. He tried greeting a few people, but they either avoided him or treated him with disgust. Hunger hit him for the first time in his life. He had no servants, no chefs, just the harsh reality of the streets. He sat near a busy road, watching people pass by, hoping someone would give him food. Hours passed and no one even looked at him. Then something unexpected happened. A woman working at a small roadside restaurant noticed him. She was beautiful, with deep brown eyes and a warm smile. Unlike the others, she didn't ignore him. Instead, she approached him with a plate of food. "Here, you look hungry," she said, handing him a plate of rice and stew. Damian was shocked. He hadn't expected kindness so soon. He took the food with shaking hands. "Thank you," he whispered, his voice hoarse from thirst. The woman smiled. "My name is Adanna. What's yours?" He hesitated before answering. "David," he lied. Adanna nodded. "Well, David, if you ever need a meal, you can always come here." As she walked away, Damian felt something strange in his heart. He had only just met her, but something about her was different. He didn't know it yet, but his search for true love had just begun. Damian sat under the bridge that night, staring at the plate Adanna had given him earlier. The food was long gone, but the kindness behind it remained fresh in his mind. For the first time in his life, someone had helped him without expecting anything in return. The next morning, hunger drove him back to the small restaurant. He stood outside, unsure if Adanna would recognize him. She spotted him immediately and waved. "David, you came back." Damian nodded shyly. I was hoping I could help around, maybe wash plates or sweep in exchange for food." Adanna laughed. "You don't have to work for food, but if you want to help, I won't stop you." From that day on, Damian became a familiar face at the restaurant. He washed dishes, wiped tables, and even helped carry supplies. The customers laughed at him, some mocking his ragged appearance, but Adanna always defended him. "A person is more than their clothes," she would say. Slowly, Damian began to enjoy the simplicity of his new life. He and Adanna talked often, and he found himself opening up in ways he never had before. He told her he had once been rich, but lost everything. It wasn't exactly the truth, but it was close enough. Adanna listened without judgment. One evening after the restaurant closed, they sat outside watching the traffic go by. "David, if you had one wish, what would it be?" Adanna asked. Damian looked at her, his heart pounding. "I wish you would love me even if you knew who I really am." But instead he smiled and said, "To find someone who sees me, not what I have." Adanna smiled. "That's a good wish." He didn't know it yet, but his wish was slowly coming true. Days turned into weeks, and Damian's feelings for Adanna grew stronger. He admired her kindness, her hard-working spirit, and the way she treated everyone with respect. She never looked down on him, never questioned why he was poor. One day, while washing plates together, she suddenly asked, "David, have you ever been in love?" Damian chuckled. I thought I was, but now I'm not sure. Adanna wiped her hands on her apron and sat beside him. Love is tricky, she said. It's not about money or looks. It's about finding someone who sees your heart. Her words hit him deeply. All his life, he had been surrounded by women who only saw his bank account. But Adanna, she saw him. One evening, after work, they took a walk around the market. It was a simple, everyday thing, but to Damian, it felt magical. He loved how she greeted people, how she laughed freely, how she saw beauty in the little things. David, she said, breaking the silence, if you could start over, what would you do differently? He thought for a moment. I'd try to live a life where love isn't bought but given freely. Adanna smiled. Then maybe you're already on the right path. Damian looked at her, his heart full. For the first time in his life, he wasn't just a billionaire or a businessman. He was simply a man, falling in love the way love was meant to be. But deep down, he knew the truth had to come out one day. And when it did, everything might change. One evening, as Damian and Adanna sat outside the restaurant, enjoying the cool breeze, a man walked up to them. He was tall, rough-looking, and smelled of alcohol. His name was Cola, one of the street boys who often hung around. Cola squinted at Damian. You dey wash plate for here, Abby? He asked, his voice laced with suspicion. Damian nodded cautiously. Yes, why? Cola chuckled. You just be like one big man way I see for newspaper that time. But he no fit be you. That man get plenty money. He laughed and staggered away. Damian felt his heart race. Was his disguise slipping? Would people start recognizing him? Adanna noticed his tension. David, are you okay? He forced a smile. Yeah, just tired. But the truth was, fear was creeping in. His time in disguise was running out, and soon he would have to face the reality he had been avoiding. As the weeks passed, Adanna and Damian grew even closer. She confided in him about her struggles, how she worked hard to support her younger brother, how life had been difficult since their parents passed away, and how she sometimes felt lonely despite always being surrounded by people. One night after closing the restaurant, Adanna turned to him with nervous eyes. David, I don't know how to say this, but I think I have feelings for you. Damian's heart stopped. He had hoped for this moment, dreamed of it. But now that it was here, guilt weighed heavily on him. Adanna, he started, but she shook her head. I know you don't have much. I don't care about money or status. I just care about you. Tears stung Damian's eyes. This was it, the proof he had been searching for. She loved him for who he was, not what he had. But could he keep lying to her? He took her hands in his heart pounding. Adanna, there's something I need to tell you. But before he could continue, a loud voice interrupted them. Adanna, what are you doing with this man? They turned to see Chuka, one of Adanna's customers who had been pursuing her for months. He was wealthy, arrogant, and always looked down on people like David. This beggar? This is who you're falling for? Chuka laughed cruelly. Adanna, you deserve better. Adanna's grip on Damian's hand tightened. I choose who I want to be with, Chuka, and it's none of your business. Chuka scoffed. We'll see about that. He walked away, but the warning in his eyes sent a shiver down Damian's spine. The secret he had been keeping was about to explode. Chuka was not a man who accepted rejection easily. Over the next few days, he made it his mission to find out more about the mysterious beggar who had stolen Adanna's heart. One evening, as Adanna and Damian closed the restaurant, Chuka arrived with a newspaper in his hand. His lips curled into a smug smile. Well, 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 look who I found. He tossed the newspaper onto the table. Damian's face was on the front page. Damian Okafor, billionaire businessman, owner of Okafor Industries. Looks a lot like your precious David, doesn't he? Chuka sneered. Adanna's eyes widened in shock. She looked at the newspaper, then at Damian. Is this true? She whispered. Damian swallowed hard. There was no more running, no more lies. Yes, Adanna, I am Damian Okafor. The world seemed to freeze. Adanna took a step back, her face filled with confusion and hurt. You lied to me. I didn't mean to. I I wanted to find true love, and I was afraid." "You were afraid?" Adanna laughed bitterly. "You think I'm the one who should feel sorry for you? I gave you my heart, David. No, Damian, and you gave me lies." Chuka smirked. "See? I told you he was a fraud." Adanna turned to him, her eyes blazing. "Shut up, Chuka. This isn't about you." She looked back at Damian, tears welling in her eyes. "I need time to think," she said softly, before walking away. Damian watched her go, his heart breaking. He had found the love he had been searching for, but had he lost it forever? Damian sat alone under the bridge, staring at the city lights in the distance. The same streets that had once felt freeing now felt suffocating. Adanna's voice echoed in his head. "I gave you my heart, Damian, and you gave me lies." He had never meant to hurt her. He only wanted to find someone who would love him for who he was, not his money. And now that he had finally found that love, his lies had ruined everything. Tunde, his personal assistant, found him the next morning. "Boss, you've proven your point. You wanted to know if someone would love you for you, and she did. But now you have to fix this." Damian sighed. "How?" "She hates me now." Tunde smirked. "She doesn't hate you. She's hurt. And the only way to make things right is to prove that your feelings were real." Damian knew Tunde was right. He couldn't let Adanna walk away without a fight. Adanna sat in her small apartment, her mind in turmoil. She had spent weeks thinking she had found a kind-hearted, honest man, someone who understood life's struggles, who saw the world the way she did. But it was all a lie. She didn't care about Damian's wealth. If he had told her the truth from the beginning, she would have accepted him. But now, all she could feel was betrayal. Her younger brother Amika noticed her mood. "Sis, what's wrong?" She sighed. "I met someone, and I thought he was different, but he lied to me." Amika shrugged. "Did he lie because he wanted to hurt you, or because he was afraid?" Adanna looked at him, surprised by his words. Had Damian lied out of fear? Had his wealth really made it impossible for him to find real love? Still, that didn't erase the pain she felt. Damian knew he had to make things right. He didn't just want to apologize with words. He wanted to show Adanna how much she meant to him, so he came up with a plan. That evening, Adanna was closing the restaurant when she heard commotion outside. She stepped out and gasped. The entire street was filled with people, street vendors, beggars, customers, and right in the middle of them was Damian, dressed in the same ragged clothes he had worn when she first met him. "What is going on?" she asked, bewildered. Damian took a deep breath. "I started this journey because I wanted to find someone who would love me without my wealth, and I found that person in you, Adanna. But in the process, I hurt you, and I will never forgive myself for that." The crowd watched in silence as he continued. "I don't want to be the billionaire Damian Okafor if it means losing you. I just want to be the man you fell in love with. David, the man who washed plates for you, laughed with you, and saw you as the most amazing person in the world." Adanna's heart pounded. She had never seen a man so vulnerable before. Tears filled her eyes, but she crossed her arms. "And how do I know this isn't just another trick?" Damian stepped forward. "I'm not asking you to take me back today. I just want you to know that I love you, and I will do whatever it takes to prove it to you." The crowd cheered, but Adanna wasn't ready to forgive him yet. She turned away and walked back inside, leaving Damian standing there. But as she closed the door, she placed a hand on her chest. Her heart was beating wildly. Could she really walk away from the only man who had ever loved her so sincerely? Adanna tossed and turned all night. Damian's words echoed in her mind. "I don't want to be the billionaire Damian Okafor if it means losing you." She wanted to believe him. She wanted to run into his arms and forget the pain. But a small voice in her head kept whispering, what if he's still lying? What if he just enjoys playing games? Her best friend Amaka visited her the next morning. "Adanna, the whole city is talking about what Damian did last night. That man is crazy in love with you." Adanna sighed. "But can I trust him?" Amaka grabbed her hand. "Adanna, the real question is, do you love him?" Adanna opened her mouth but couldn't speak, because deep down, she knew the answer. Damian wasn't giving up. He knew he had hurt Adanna, and he was ready to prove that his love was real. Over the next few days, he showed up at the restaurant, not as a billionaire, but as the same humble David who had washed plates for her. He helped in the kitchen, swept the floors, and even served customers. People whispered and pointed. How could a billionaire be doing this? But Damian didn't care. The only thing that mattered was Adanna. One evening, after the restaurant closed, Adanna found him still there, scrubbing a table. She sighed. Why are you still doing this? He put down the cloth and looked into her eyes. Because I love you, Adanna, and I want to prove that I'm not just a man with money. I'm a man who wants to spend his life with you. Tears welled up in her eyes. Damian, I don't need a grand gesture. I just need to know that I can trust you. He stepped closer. Then let me spend the rest of my life proving it to you. For the first time since the truth was revealed, Adanna let a small smile creep onto her lips. Maybe, just maybe, she was ready to forgive him. Days turned into weeks, and slowly, Adanna's walls began to break. Damian continued to show up, not as a billionaire trying to impress her, but as the man who had once been her closest friend. One night, as they sat outside after work, Adanna finally spoke. You once asked me what my dream was, she said softly. Damian nodded, remembering. I've always wanted to own my own restaurant, a place where I can cook with love and create something special. Damian took her hand gently. Then let me help you make that dream come true. Adanna looked at him, searching his eyes for any sign of deception, but all she saw was sincerity. Maybe, just maybe, he truly had changed. With Damian's help, Adanna finally opened her dream restaurant, but this time, she wasn't alone. Damian stood beside her, not as a billionaire trying to impress her, but as a man who had earned her love and trust. The grand opening was a huge success. People from all over the city came, not just for the food, but to see the love story that had captured everyone's hearts. Chuka, the man who had once tried to humiliate Damian, stood in the crowd, watching with envy. He had lost, and he knew it. As Adanna and Damian stood outside the restaurant, looking at the sign that read Adanna's Kitchen, she turned to him with teary eyes. I forgive you, Damian. His heart swelled with emotion. I promise I will never lie to you again. And this time, she believed him. Months passed, and Adanna and Damian's love only grew stronger. Despite the challenges, they had found their way back to each other. One evening, as they walked by the beach, Damian suddenly stopped and turned to her. Adanna, he said, his voice thick with emotion. She looked at him, curious. What is it? He slowly got down on one knee and pulled out a small velvet box. Adanna gasped. I started this journey looking for true love, and I found it in you. Not because you saw me as a billionaire, but because you saw the real me. Will you marry me? Tears streamed down Adanna's face. Yes, Damian. 1,000 times, yes. The crowd around them cheered as he slipped the ring onto her finger and pulled her into a deep, passionate kiss. In the end, love had won. Not money, not status, just love. And as Damian held Adanna in his arms, he knew he had finally found what he had been searching for all along. The end.